it's this diversity of activities, each one of which is just superb.
David, it's great to have been with you for 3 days. I'm really proud that the Fred Forum has put the leadership spotlight on you and your life and your contributions, which in 2012 we've joined also the ASTD, which this year recognized your lifetime contributions to our field of leadership development. I want to take an approach where we really look at your life, and so maybe briefly tell me about your life.
Such a almost Norman Rockwell kind of background, but in the structures of the Midwestern philosophy, which is responsibility, hard work, keep your nose clean, don't stick your head up above anybody else, and so it was a healthy place. I'd really loved to raise my children like that. When I went to Iowa State, I thought I was going to go to medical school, so I majored in chemistry. I hated every hour of it, but you did what you were supposed to in those days. I had to take a course in psychology when I was a senior. It was force distribution, and I found myself for the first time in my college career reading the textbooks for fun. And I did really well, and I remember a young faculty member taking me aside after I'd aced all the tests, and he said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, I got this job going to work for Procter & Gamble in a soap factory." And he said, "You ought to go to graduate school in psychology." Psychology was the other side of the moon. It just never occurred to me you could make a living as a psychologist. So I went to work in the soap factory for 2 years. They had a management development program, and I changed jobs. And it was almost equivalent of an MBA. But along the line, I got more and more interested in psychology. So I decided somehow that's my future. So I resigned my job and went back to graduate school. And that's how it all got started.
So, David, tell me about maybe the jobs that have shaped you, and maybe, again, let's start with becoming the fellow at the Center for Creative Leadership and how that shaped you.
Well, I had an opportunity to go to the Center for Creative Leadership when it was just getting started, and the man who had set it up had just died. And they were, I'd have to say, struggling to find out what they should be doing. He had chartered, H. Smith Richardson, he had chartered it, and he tasked them for studying how you select leaders, and he was much more into selection than he was into development. So that was about the only thing on the white sheet of paper. And when they asked me what I thought they should do, I said you ought to run an assessment center for development, not for selection. And you should use the results of the test for the benefit of the person, which means counseling, coaching. Here's your profile. You're an extrovert. This is how you would get along under stress. Or you're an introvert. This is how you want to be alone under stress. And I had been teaching psychological testing for 14 years. It had never occurred to me to study the process of the person getting the results because they didn't get them. So we had to learn how to deal with in a positive way, which is in a way pretty easy. Positive way with the results of psychological testing. So what we had to learn was how to give people hard-headed information about themselves that was kind and honest. Those two words ran through that, and that was a completely new world for me.
When you look back, what are the things that you're most proud of relative to your various contributions and the roles that you've played?
Well, the Center for Creative Leadership really looms up there because when I went there, they had 25 people, 35,000 square foot beautiful building, a budget of $750,000, and a mission to do something about selecting and developing leaders. Today, 40 years later, we got around the world 600 people. We have an operation in our Mecca is in Greensboro. We have a branch in Colorado Springs, a branch in San Diego, a branch in Brussels, a branch in Singapore, and opening branches in Ethiopia and India and Russia. Now they're a little wobbly still. And we have a budget of $100 billion. And we grapple with how we count what happens because you deal with 12 people for a week or 1,000 people for an hour. So how do you come up with something. But we have been, for the last 10 years, ranked by the London Financial Times in the top 10 leadership programs in the world. And the other 9 are almost always business schools. So we're the only non-business school. So that's a very very
that's
nice
the towering achievement.
Well, let me tell you one other thing. There's another way of looking at what happened here at Fred. This young woman came up to me and said, well, how young? This woman came up to me and said, I'm thrilled to meet you because when I was in high school, I took your inventory, the Strong Campbell interest inventory, and that was very, very helpful to me. Well, that has happened to me lots of times, so that's very reassuring.
But just that image of helping guide people to choose their lives towards their passions, that's a powerful contribution. If we were to come a little more pedestrian, though, and grind this down to other assessments, and we'll leave the Campbell on the side since we just talked about that. You've authored many different assessments, and I'm wondering if you have a metaphorically here a favorite child. In other words, of those that you've created and brought to fruition. Do some stand out more than others for you?
Well, one stands out more because it's really the most potent and it's most widely used. And it's called the Campbell Leadership Index. And it's a series of 100 adjectives, each one of which has been shown by outside data to discriminate between people who are good leaders and people who are not so good leaders. And that's really hard data to get. It took us 4 or 5 years to do that. And they're very sensible adjectives. Are you productive? Are you honest? And that sort of thing. And that's in a 360 form, so the person fills that out on themselves, and then raters fill that out, same form, on that person. And the way we always do it, the world doesn't always necessarily do that. We always have the person pick the raters, so you can't run from the data. And so when you get the profile back, one of the most disturbing statistics of my entire career is the correlation between the self and the observer is about 0.35, which is a low correlation, which means most people, most of us, of course not you, Rocky, but most of us don't have a very good idea about what people think of us. So the leadership index is the most potent, and it's also, I think, the most widely used. And it's also the most expensive, because that's expensive to get all of that stuff. And sooner or later, it will be on the web in ways that's much more applicable. Although then I worry about it, because whoever uses the data ought to have some psychological training of some kind to know they're not going to get in the way of somebody's ego, so forth.
I'd love to hear you talk about your experience at the Fred Forum, and in particular, thinking about the future of executive development.
Well, I'm going to start by telling you one of my major disappointments in life. When I went to the Center for Creative Leadership, my mother was a music teacher, so I grew up. There was music in my house all the time. People were coming and going, barbershop quartets. She played at all the weddings and funerals, and I just didn't know that music wasn't part of everybody's life. And when I went to the center, I said, we're going to use music. And I brought in music into the classroom, and I had music that was appropriate, people got their test scores back. There was sort of the Mozart, quiet, concert, Concerto in A, and so forth. And at the end of the time, we'd play something that was rousing. And this never caught on. I was seen as a weirdo. And the center doesn't use music. Well, I look at Fred, and every time we turn around, there's something incredibly powerful about your opening chorale, this group you finished with. Of course, I have to say, you're fortunate to be in Boston. You just reach out and get to Boston Opera, for God's sakes. We can't do that in Colorado Springs. And it is this incredible diversity of activities. I've never been to a conference where somebody says, okay, you got half an hour, go think. A huge emphasis on youth. That was very unusual. You've never been to another conference where you've seen so many people under 25 and particularly participating. And that young woman, you want to buy, the young woman is really ambitious, Livewire. Wouldn't you like to buy stock in her when she went public? So that it's this diversity of things.
Party on, protect the earth.
Exactly. It's this diversity of activities, each one of which is just superb. Just superb. It's the variety that has as its glue leadership or development or innovation. I love this thing a guy said this morning, that a leader is someone who surprises us. Now that's going to go in my repertoire. A leader is someone who surprises us. That means they're thinking outside the box, you know. And the daily provision of a newspaper for the day before. I mean, there's so many. I'd have to list literally 100 things, Rocky. I said in my comments, I don't like the word networking. That seems to me sanitary and sterile and so forth. And friendship is going in that direction. I love your concept of the connective tissue holding people together, because I had breakfast this morning with a young woman from China, and who I'd had some reason to have some contact with before. And after I finished breakfast with her, I said to her, and I said to her, Jane, I'm sure you're going to understand what I'm about to say. I really had a great breakfast with you. I could have had breakfast with anyone in this room, then it would have been great. There were just no duds at all. So it's a diversity, focused on leadership, done well, entertaining, fast-paced, music, mountain climbing, Antarctica. So that's my thought on it.
Thank you, David. In closing, I'd like you to do me a favor. You gave me a card. You gave all of us a card with a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And I'm wondering if you would maybe read it for all of us.
Okay. Here's the quote. Ralph Waldo Emerson, who lived from 1800 to 1862, so he died in his 80s. Here's what he said: to laugh often and love much, to win the respect of intelligent persons and the affection of children, to earn the approbation of honest critics and to endure the betrayal of false friends, to appreciate beauty, to find the best in others, to give of oneself, to leave the world a better place, whether by a healthy child, a garden patch, or a redeemed social condition, to have played and laughed with enthusiasm and sung with exultation, to know that even one life has breathed easier because you have lived, that is to succeed.
But one of the reasons I wanted you to read it, I mean, I think you say this is a nice thing to leave behind, and so in that way it's a tactic, but I think it's also a strategy, and it's a strategy for a life well lived. And what I'll always associate with this quote is my friend David Campbell, in the many ways that he exemplifies this quote for me.
Well,
thank you very much.
You had a section this time on luck, and I better quit. I cannot think of my career without realizing how lucky I've been. The woman cried this morning.
Yeah.
That's what you do it, Fred, okay?
That's what we...
It's emotional.
Yeah. That's what we do. We try to open the heart. As a matter of fact, I think the word that was used in different ways was wholehearted. I think today it was, open-hearted. Anyway, the word heart. And I think for me, leadership is the head and the heart. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we leave the heart out, or sometimes we leave the head out. Yeah. We need them both.
Well, we need them both, and they don't necessarily always come in one body. And so we need some heads and we need some hearts.
Yeah, and ultimately some feet, because it should be about people moving forward.
Well, if you get into that,
action.
We need spleens.
We better stop right there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.